Psalm 139. Let's remain seated as we read Psalm 139. I'm reading from the English Standard Version. Psalm 139. To the choir master, a psalm of David. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You have searched out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in behind and before and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it. Where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night. Even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as day, for darkness is as light with you. For you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast the sum of them. If I could count them, they are more than the sand. I awake and I am still with you. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. O men of blood, depart from me. They speak against you with malicious intent. Your enemies take your name in vain. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with complete hatred. I count them as my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. This is the word of the Lord. Well, saints, it is the new year. It is the new year. And every now and then, from this pulpit, we care, or we show some concern or sensitivity to the seasons, whether it be a holiday or a massive turn of the calendar as it is now. We are 2 days into 2022. So I've chosen this year to pause and to point out a truth that I think would be a helpful one, to put a word in for you as you think about what changes you'd love to see happen this year, the areas you'd love to grow in, the things that you'd love to see the Lord grant to you. It is almost inevitable, at least for most of us, not all of us necessarily, but for most of us, for this to be a season when we are thinking about those things. So from this passage, I want to exhort you towards two things. That you would desire to grow in your knowledge of God this year. I want to exhort you towards that using these words, that you would make that one of your grand ambitions. Lord, as this year sets out, help me know you. And then secondly, that out of that, flowing out of that, and that's a very important little connection there, flowing out of that knowledge of God, that you would desire to walk in his ways. So not a dead type of knowledge, right? But the kind of knowledge of him that would lead you to more faithfully walk in his ways. That's the two big ideas. So parents, if you get super distracted, don't feel as though you missed the whole sermon, right? That's the sermon in a nutshell there. Pop in every now and then over the next 30 minutes and catch the rest of the sermon, whatever pieces you're able to get. 4 points to articulate this for us that are laid out in this passage. The all-knowing God. David is meditating on this attribute of a God who knows all things, the all-knowing God. But also, he's meditating on the all-present God. Not only a God who knows all things, but he is soaking his mind in this reality that this God who knows all things is a God who is present everywhere. But not only those two things, but he is also the all-active God. He is actually in control. He is not docile in the ways in which he knows or he's present. He is active, actively doing things. And then lastly, the all-holy God, right? Is the last section that he wraps up with. The all-knowing God. Oh, saints, this is the psalm that you come to have your puny thoughts about God blown away. This is where you come to. If you fear like you have grown casual about who this God is, join David here in meditating upon this all-glorious God. As David thinks upon just how much this God knows, he utters the words, "Such knowledge is too wonderful for me." Yeah, that's what you call being blown away. By meditating on one attribute of God, just his omniscience. And he thinks about it, he articulates it, and he gets to a point, he says, this is too much. My mind cannot fathom, catch up with the grandness, the limits of this kind of knowledge. The words I am articulating, whilst inspired by the Spirit, do not capture the boundaries of the reality of just how much God knows. It's a wonderful knowledge, David says. Notice different aspects of this wonderful, divine, glorious knowledge. The chief thing that David points out about it is that it is personal. It is personal. The knowledge that David is marveling at is not like a supercomputer, massive database type of knowledge, like the World Wide Web, right? That's not what he's marveling at. Wow, like God, you know so much, right? Like when you hang out with those guys who've read encyclopedias and they're always correcting you about something. Well, actually, ants don't do that. Say blah, 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 blah. Wow, you know so much. The knowledge is marveling at is, man, God, you know me so much, so well, so thoroughly. It's a personal knowledge. You see, that's how he begins, isn't it? Oh Lord, what have you done? You have searched me, and known me. So David is marveling at. The God of all the universe knows me. What does he know about me? Would you notice how it is my sitting, my rising, right? He knows my thoughts, verse 2. Verse 3, he knows my lying down. He is acquainted with all my ways. even before a word is on my tongue. This knowledge is personal. He knows you. And that's what's glorious about this and wonderful about this. Notice what is wonderful about this personal knowledge. It is a knowledge that is marked with detail, with specificity. It does not miss any detail about me, about you. He knows the mundane things, like my rising up and my sitting down. Do you even know you're rising up and you're sitting down? He knows all of it. There's no gap in the things he knows about you that's kind of marked as these are unimportant. Unimportant. He knows all of it with perfection. It's not as though he's attentive to, like, the major events in your life, like Facebook, right? It shows you how much it cares about you and knows about you, sends you a little happy birthday with whatever date you put in there as your date, and people, reminding you, like HBD. Those are the ones I love the most. I'm like, wow, you're so thoughtful. Such energy and intentionality that you have put into this. Because Facebook reminded you, and you took time to type in 3 letters. Some of them not even in caps. Didn't even bother. Not just highlights in your life, like birthday, anniversary. No. Every single moment of your life, he knows. He is fully aware of it. Your free time, he knows all of it. Your sleeping time, he knows all of it. Your bored time, he knows all of it. He is absolutely aware, attentive about all things that concern you. And that's what he says there as he's wrapping up, isn't it? All my ways, my habits, my mannerisms, my all, that's such a big word. All of my ways. He is acquainted with them. This is wonderful knowledge. It is wonderful because it is personal. It is personal. He cares about me. He knows details concerning me, not just merely facts. It is complete, it is comprehensive, it is all my ways, mundane things included. But this knowledge is also amazing because of the perception, the penetration of that knowledge. This knowledge is not limited to things that are visible. It pierces through the limitations that are human of visibility, and that knowledge cuts across that line. Because you see, the things that he knows include our thoughts. Verse 2, look at it. You know when I sit down and when I rise up, you discern my thoughts from afar. Not visible, but that's not a hindrance to this knowledge of God. He knows it. It pierces through visibility and still has perfect knowledge of that. Whether it's my motives, my thinking, my intentions, all of those things are on clear display for this God. He knows all of them. But notice not just the invisibility of things like intentions and motives and moods and all that, but also time. This knowledge is so perfect, he is not waiting for David to think a thought so that he can know the thought. He is not waiting for David to speak a word so that he can know the word. This knowledge is perfect. It pierces through time. Even before the thought enters into David's mind, behold, he knows it. Even before words depart from his lips, he altogether knows it. This is wonderful knowledge. It is personal, it is detailed, it is penetrating, it is complete and total. Saints, you are known by God. God sees you. Absolutely everything there is to be known about you is perfectly known. Far better than you know yourself, this God knows you. He understands everything about you. He knows your frame. He knows exactly how much you can take this year. Exactly how much you can take. He knows the types of weaknesses that you are coming into this first week with. He knows it. The fears, the insecurities, the sins, the immaturity, the doubts, the unfaithfulness, the strengths. He knows everything there is to know about you. The way David is laying it out here says, is not as though, oh, these 5 things contain the entirety of God's knowledge. No. He sends it off into the horizon. Keep going with it. What he knows about you is not informed by your perception of yourself, whether good or bad. Me, I think it's fine. It's bad English to start with, but it's also not really fundamental. What he knows about you is not informed by what people think of you. Oh, we think you're this, strong or weak, whatever it is, good or bad. This knowledge is the knowledge that counts above all other knowledge. This is the ultimate knowledge that matters. And so as you begin, there's some gospel implications there. If you're an unbeliever here today, hear this. God knows you. He knows you. You might comfort yourself with knowledge about maybe you're not that bad, right? Come to church, at least beginning of the year maybe, major events of the year. You're not as bad as so-and-so. Would you hear this? That's not the knowledge that matters. Your view of yourself or how you portray yourself. The God with whom you have to do knows you. Everything about you is naked, is laid bare and exposed before him. Believing saint, would you hear these words? That as you're starting off this year, you stand naked and bare before this God. Oh yes, with all the graces that he has worked in, on display, visible. That's a good thing. But also with all the weaknesses, with all the sins, with all the different ways in which you need to grow. He sees them all. Oh, you're going to see that he sees them all, especially for you, with a kind, loving, committed heart. But I encourage you even now to see yourself in the light of his holiness, with his perfect, true knowledge, to allow that knowledge to be what matters right now. Not your own statements about yourself, not other people's statements about you, what God sees and what God says. Would you allow it to be the most important thing? More on that as we build. Notice secondly that he's the all-present God. He's the all-present God. Verse 7 onwards, it really kind of reacts to the natural impulse of fallen man when you know you are that exposed. He asks in verse 7, where shall I go from your spirit? Where shall I go from your spirit? Isn't that the natural instinct? If you're that exposed, what do? Run! Run! Hide! Hide! Don't be seen, don't be known less. So David naturally moves on to this next step of meditation. It's God who knows me wonderfully, perfectly. Where shall I run from his presence? There's nowhere to run, is a summary. Moms, again, if you tune out from this point on, that's the point of everything I'm about to say. There is no place to hide. Oh, but hear this. What starts off as that might be bad news, but it's only bad news for the unbeliever, for the one who rejects this God. It actually turns out, as he builds up on this point, that this is actually his primary hope and confidence. Where shall I run from your presence? It's kind of the thing with Jonah, isn't it? He was trying to flee from the presence of God, only to find God is as much in Israel as he is in the middle of the sea, with pagan sailors, as much as he is at the bottom of the ocean, in the belly of a fish. God is in all those places. And so David meditates on this. He meditates on this by thinking about it hyperbolically. If that's a word, I will explain. He exaggerates it. He uses his imagination so that his meditation is not limited to his experience. No. He thinks about the limits of all of it. What if, distance-wise, I was to ascend to the heavens? An impossibility. What if, distance-wise, I was to descend to the depths of Sheol? Remoteness. What if I take the wings of the morning, verse 9, and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea? Doesn't just meditate on the distance, height, depth, remoteness, uttermost parts of the sea. He meditates on difficulty, morality, evil. What if darkness covers me? What if the worst of the worst happens so that that which is meant to be light, that in itself, becomes darkness for me? What if I was to plummet those depths and the most evil of evil occurs and the most dark of darkness of night shows up and absolutely engulfs me? And that's kind of the hopelessness, right? When he says, like when that is supposed to be light, this is barely darkness. The very things that are light become darkness. What if that happens? You see him. Verse 8, if. Verse 11, if I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night. You are there. You are there. You are there when it comes to geographic distances, height or depth. Verse 8. You are there when it comes to remote places, where I imagine I shall be isolated from everyone and everything, and I shall be absolutely all alone, abandoned, forsaken, lonely. You are there. What about darkness? When it eats me up and swallows me and causes me to sink into a place where I can see nothing good, because even that which was meant to be light is now darkness to me. What does he say? Verse 10. Or verse 12, sorry. Even the darkness is not dark to you, and the night is bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. He has no limitations. He is present everywhere. Saint, you are not alone. There's a God who knows you, and he knows everything there is to be known about you. But it doesn't stop there. That God who knows you better than anybody else does, understands everything about you better than anybody does, including yourself. That God is with you. He is there with you. Whether it is a geographic, situational place, circumstantial place, or it is a moral place, an experiential place over darkness, over descending into a certain kind of depth and gloominess and despondency. This God is present. He's present. It's interesting how my little one, Zizi, at night when he's afraid or he's scared, I can't convince him with any logic, right? I'm here, I'm in the next room, the lights are on, there's nothing happening. Like, if you call me, I'll come. He wants one thing. Daddy, I want you to stay here. You know kids, most persistent creatures on earth. But, here. Because in his mind, if I stay there, it's all fine. The room could be dark. The room could be dark. Darkness has not gone, but it's okay. Why? Because Dad is here. There could be monsters and other imaginary things in the darkness, but it's fine. Why? Dad is here. This is this God for all of these little children. There's a God who knows us perfectly, personally. And that God is with you. Always. Or everywhere. There is no imaginable, even hyperbolic situation, exaggerated situation that could ever part you from his presence. This God is right there. Oh, saints, here's the beginning. Would you make this your confidence? Would you be in awe of these realities? Would you not start off blind to the most important thing that there is? Namely, God, and who he is to you. He knows you, and he is with you. Oh, gospel note, think about that. You can't run away from his presence. It is in him that you live and move and have your being. And these realities about the presence of God are put even on clearer display in the New Testament when the Son of God comes and takes upon himself the flesh of a man, and he is called Emmanuel, God with us. So that he is that with us. To that degree, to that extent. Tempted and tried in every point without sin, so that he can be a suitable high priest. This is who he is. He is with us. He knows us. He understands. He can empathize. He has experienced the weight of temptation without sin. He was called the man of sorrows as he walked on earth. Yes, he has borne your shoes. He gets it. He is with us. And he knows us. And you know the limits that the gospel takes us to. For those who come to know him. To eventually say that we are actually one with him. 3. Notice, he's not only knowledgeable and present, he is active. He is the all-active God. Brother called Kidner phrases it this way, verse 13 to 18, reveal to us that the God who sees the invisible and invades the inaccessible is also active there. He is also active there. He is not just merely an observer and a sympathizer. He knows it all. He is present in all circumstances, and he is active. You see what he's doing in verse 13? Not only is it speaking about a penetration of the things that are actually invisible, he's describing my inward parts, my inner man. And what does he say about it? He's the one who formed them. He rules over all of those details. He's not passive. He's not indifferent. His presence is not inert. Far from it. The presence of this God is powerful, mighty, yes, even creative, causing things to exist. That's the God who knows, and that's the God who's present. He understands all the intricacies about you because he made you. And he's active in that place. Verse 13 says, you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. Oh, there you were surely alone. No, God was there. And God wasn't merely there. He's the one who was knitting you together. Not deism, a God who has basically set up laws of biology and physics and now they run themselves. Those very laws of biology in the womb that are actively creating you. God is active in and through them. The same one who holds the stars above and keeps the world spinning. Oh yes, there's physics, but it is all God in it and through it. He's an active God. Your most delicate, formative stage, when you were nothing, in control of nothing, no opinions, no strength, no ability. Guess who was there? Guess who knew? And guess who was active? God was. Oh, stuff has changed. I know you're a grown-up, you pay taxes now. But how you need to remember, someone and something far greater than you. Think upon it, saints. Man, verse 16 takes it to the next level, doesn't it? Not only did his eyes see the unformed substance, you see how it penetrates? No limitations of time. His activity was in utter control. What does it say? Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there were none of them. Yeah, that's everything, isn't it? Full, total, complete, perfect control. No random chance, bahati mbaya, that is dictating David. A God who knows it all, a God who is present in absolutely every circumstance, and a God who is controlling every detail concerning his life. Those days that are yet in the future, they have not yet arrived. Guess who's already there? Working. A God who knows perfectly. And a God who will be in absolutely every single situation of the 3rd of January 2022. And the 4th and the 5th and the 6th and the 7th and the 8th, all of the way to the end. There's one who knows you perfectly, who is already there, and he is active. What manner of a God is this? It's not a puny little God. This God is a whole lot more powerful than a 10-step plan for whatever it is you're planning on doing this year. This is where you start, oh saint. This is where you start. God. God. Know your God. Join David. You see what he says in verse 17? How precious to me are your thoughts. Get there, O saint. That's the ambition. You see the ambition? Get there. Where? Oh, how precious to me are your thoughts, O God. That's wonder. That's wonder. This is beyond me. Like, be impressed with that which is impressive. Enter God. We're most probably not ready to do a thing until we're there. And this is the most important thing that we could do. Know our God. You'll notice here that he says that it is God's activity. Even in my very formation, David's very formation, that leads him to understand his worth and value. Doesn't he marvel at that? He kind of transitions from marveling at the wonderful works of God. Verse 14, I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. That value and that worth in David, it is anchored and rooted in the value and worth of God. Who am I? What am I? I'm a masterpiece of God, the pinnacle of his creation. Creation. Oh yeah, God's not created. But of all the things he created, look at the detail that he's giving to this. Oh, this is all important, especially for us who believe in the total depravity of man. You see, if the devil can convince you of your worthlessness, which is not the teaching of the Bible, not at all. Jesus instead says all of the wealth in the world put together does not compare to the worth of what? One soul. One soul. What you're dealing with and what you're handling this year is precious in the sight of God. Your soul. Why is it precious? Not because of what the world says. Teenagers, you're precious because you're wearing cool sneakers. Amen. You're not precious because you're not wearing cool sneakers. It's not where your worth lies. It's not where your worth lies. You're precious because of something you've performed or some strength you uniquely have that differentiates you from others. That's not where your worth lies. Some unique ability, some attainment in life. That's not where you, that's a lie. And the minute we disanchor ourselves and anchor ourselves from these foundational truths about who God is and understanding ourselves in light of that truth, that's a boat without an anchor in a storm. It matters what I think. It matters what I say. It matters how I live because I have been formed by God. Because God knows all things. Because God is present in all situations. Because God is active in everything. Therefore, saints, it matters. It matters. You know, blindness to these realities is what leads to a wicked life. God doesn't see. He only cares about the highlights. Like community group, be on your best behavior during community group, amen? When the saints come over, church on Sunday, etc., right? That mentality doesn't lead to the Christian life. It's pieces and patches here, no consistency. Because it is not a life flowing out of knowledge of God. A denial of Psalm 139 can lead to a practical atheism. A practical atheism. Where the faith we are living out is actually more like a Sunday gig than it actually is. A life flowing out of knowledge of God, who knows perfectly, who is in absolutely every situation, every circumstance, everywhere. And he's the one who counts, because he's the one who's ruling over everything. So it's very natural that David wraps up with this almost kind of break in the flow of the psalm. When he says in verse 19, oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. Kind of hits you, doesn't it? Like you're almost on one track of knowing God, and then like, oh, this kind of sounds harsh. David the warrior speaking with his imprecatory prayers. What does that have to do with anything? Oh, it's the most natural implication, isn't it? Most natural implication. If God knows absolutely everything, and God is absolutely everywhere, saints, it matters how we live, doesn't it? It matters how we live. It matters how we think. It matters how we feel. Our intentions matter. This is what draws that grand line of divide between the wicked and the righteous. Who are the righteous? Not those who think they are or those who say they are. It's those who simply live in light of the truths of God. So David meditates on the external elements, and then he meditates on the internal implications. Externally, he wants to draw a large, thick line dividing himself because of these realities and those who deny God, those who take his name in vain. No, I don't want that. I don't want to act, speak, think, feel, engage with those who are denying your existence in the way they live. I don't want that. I hate that. I abhor that. Oh, you see the clear line there, saint? This is where consistency in the Christian life comes from. God. Not patching up your life with some Christian two habits, eh? Take your life as it is and stick some Bible reading, then stick some community grouping, then stick some evangelism in your Uber drive every now and then. Behold the Christian. It doesn't work. Try this other path. Know your God. He knows you perfectly. My goodness, he knows you perfectly. Do you see how you have nothing to hold on to other than Jesus, O saint? Perfectly. Kila kitu. Everything. He has been there from the very beginning of time. Oh, he will be there to the very end of time. When I awake, I am still with you. That's the God with whom we have to do. Knowing that he who knows me perfectly is the one who came to be with me, identified with me, lived the life I could not live, died for me on the cross, and rose from the grave. So that this knowledge, this being put on display, this exposure, becomes an exposure that has led me to the cross. Nothing else will suffice to cover myself. No self-righteousness, no pretentiousness, nothing. The only thing that can cover me is Jesus, is his blood, is his imputed righteousness. Know his presence. Know that he's with you in all places. But his presence does not need to be feared. It's a grace for you. Even there, your hand will lead me. I don't need to be afraid it will be upon me harshly. Or when I have come just as I am, I have received him through his Son Christ. His presence becomes my comfort, becomes my strength, becomes my hope. And that's why he wraps up as he does in the last verse. Verse 23, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me. What does David want? He wants it all. This is the deepest, sincerest Christian life, using New Testament terms. With that knowledge, O God, search me. I'm not looking for a life of pleasing man, rising up in status, getting complete. He wants the truth. Exposed, bare. Deal with that, O Lord. Show me. I don't want any hidden ways that are unseen by you. Put them, expose them, forgive them, cleanse them. But listen to this. Help me and lead me in the way everlasting. If you know this God as he has revealed himself, this is the true one with whom we have to do. What else would you want? What else would you want? But to live in light of that reality. That's what David is praying for. Lord, help me live in light of that reality concerning you. Help me walk in your ways. Lead me in the everlasting way. Saints, that's the story of the gospel. That's the basic Christian life on display. Put on display as a sinner, cleansed and forgiven by him who came to live for you, but empowered to walk with him in dependence upon him. That's what David is asking. You lead me. You lead me. You're starting off this year? Would you aim for those two things? To know your God to the point where you will say with David, oh, how wonderful are your thoughts. Marvel at who God is. And secondly, humbly plead with him to help you walk in light of that truth and reality. Abandon any other fabrications of the Christian life that lead you to a self-righteousness, a self-confidence, a self-dependence. The God who is for you knows you perfectly, will be with you in the days to come, and he is active in all of that. Invite him to help you to walk in his ways. Father, we pray that you would show us that there is nothing more precious to pursue this year than a knowledge of you. Father, work in us an aspiration for a more faithful Christian life, knowing that good for us, the thing that is best for us, is to live in ways that accord to the truth concerning you. Would you help us help one another? Would you help us through the means of grace that you have ordained for us, that is this church? And would you allow, when this year comes to an end, for us to be able to testify that you aided us to grow in these two things? We pray this in your Son's name. Amen.